happy to introduce the next speaker, Mr. Phil Barrett. Mr. Phil Barrett is currently serving his 10th term as a Clifton Park Town Supervisor. Supervisor Barrett is the longest tenured town supervisor in Clifton Park history. During his time in office, Supervisor Barrett has emphasized the balance of academic development and the expansion of the town's parks and recreational resources. Barrett's efforts have resulted in the redevelopment of the Exit 9 Commerce area, the preservation of more than 1,400 acres of property, several new parks and recreational areas, and more than 14 miles of new trails. During his time in office, the highway tax has been significantly reduced, and the town remains without a general fund property tax. Phil graduated from Providence College, where he received a ROTC scholarship. Lessons learned as an Army officer and an invaluable experience attained through working in the private sector prepared Phil for his time as a government executive. In the private sector, he most recently worked as a VP for KeyBank. Phil has also served as the chairman of the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors. Phil is a proud dad and a husband, spending much of his spare time attending soccer practices and games at Shenandoah College. That's his bio. But the Phil I know is he goes to work every day and arrives at the office at 7:15 every day, and it comes back home around 6:30, sometimes 8, 9, 10, and he spends most of his weekends attending different events. Whenever he has time, he loves cooking, doing the laundry, and the other house chores. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me and welcome my husband.
Personally, I'd rather listen to her talk.
We do too.
But I can do that anytime. I love a Papa. Papa's fantastic. This is the second time you've invited me to speak, and it's always a joy. I knew HP long before I knew Lee, and HP is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I'm not going to talk about all his patents. I'm not going to talk about all his patents and his incredible career and everything, because he'll get mad at me. He doesn't like people showering praise on him. He had a lot of them. But he has been a great friend to me, and as well, great friends. So many of you I call my friends, and I'm very proud to do so. So you've introduced me to rice cakes, my wife, and so many great friends. What more can you say? I mean, it's incredible. So, and it's great for me to be here. Ron, it was great to hear your comments. Ron talked a lot of very truthful aspects of running for office. The thing I'm most shocked about is that MSNBC got something wrong. I'm shocked. I mean, I was floored when I saw that, Ron. I mean, that probably never happens, right? And Yasmin, I was just talking to Jerry in the back of the room, because Jerry I know he lives in Nisku, and I told him you're going to be in very good hands with Yasmin as your supervisor. She's off to a great start, and she has a lot of challenges, as we all do when we get started, but I know she's going to do great. I want to go off script a little bit. Anthony asked a question before, and I think it's something that we should talk about. The first Ron Kim talked about uncomfortable conversations, right? Anthony's talking about what can you do as a group to make your voices heard and be effective. And I think in a lot of ways those two conversations can go hand in hand. But I think it's important to start with, if you weren't born here, why are you here? Why did you want to be here? Couple, anybody want to offer anything up? Maybe it's somebody you know, maybe it's not you. Why did you want to come here? All right, for your children's future. What else?
Freedom.
Freedom, number one. Thank you, honey. And we didn't plan that.
Opportunities.
Opportunities. It's about freedom and opportunity, right? That's why you wanted to come here. And that's probably why, because of what this country offers, is why you love America. So never lose sight of that. So when you go forward and you talk about politics and maybe think about a party that you want to join or a group that you want to join or becoming involved, never forget why you came here and why you love it here. Freedom, opportunity, a better life for you and your families. And when you start thinking about that, and don't get caught up in the daily narrative in the press that we see every day, when you start thinking about that, look at the group of the party, when you talk about alignments, that best matches your ideals, your beliefs, whether it be about the country or any other issue, and truly which area, which group, which party do you best align with, based on those principles. And I think if you do that based on ideas and issues and standards and what you have in your heart, as opposed to strictly backgrounds, races, identity politics, I guarantee you that will foster a much better relationship for you and the people you're working with, and will also be much more gratifying and successful for you in the future. So that's just one thing, not to get off course too much there, Tony, but I think those are things to keep in mind, and that's how you will have the beneficial experience and the most effectiveness. You know, Ron was absolutely right. The first thing I did in my early 20s, I went to the local Republican chairman. Why did I go to the Republican chairman? Well, I did what I just explained that I recommend to you. I thought about where did I align, where were my beliefs and my mind and my heart, where did they lie, and who best aligned with them. And unlike Ron, I've never changed parties. If anything, it's just stronger in the direction of where the Republican Party is. Not because the Republicans are a great party, necessarily, just because the other option is just moved so far away from my beliefs and my core that the Republicans are the only option. But I went to the Republican chairman and I said, "Give me the worst job you got." "Oh, really? Who's this punk kid?" Asking me for the worst job. Who does he think he is? So she said, "All right, you're sign chairman." I said, "Oh, all right, well, that sounds cool." Worst job possible, by the way. That was back, you know, now you see those campaign signs, and they're on the steel, you know, they're on the steel thing you put in the ground, then you put the sign over it. Well, back when I was first sign chairman, they were basically wooden crosses. It was a piece of wood, and a piece of wood nailed this way, and then you stapled the sign on either side. You did this, Ron. Stapled them on either side, and every time the wind blew or it rained, half the signs had to get fixed. But you know what I did? I was the best sign chairman the party ever had. Because I was out there every night fixing those signs. And it got noticed. It got noticed. So, in the next go-around, well, geez, you know, he proved himself. He's a hard worker. What else can we give him? And that's how you build credibility and gain responsibility. I don't care what party or group you join. If you don't have credibility, and if you don't, you won't gain responsibility. So if you truly want to move up the ranks and truly want to be more effective, just start small. Start small with one or two tasks and do them to the best of your ability. The one thing I realized when I was very young, and Ron talked about knowing who you are and having honest conversations with yourself. In most rooms, certainly this one, I'm not the best looking in the room. I'm not the smartest in the room. And there's other things that I'm not the best at. collectively. But there's nobody in this room that'll work harder than me. So if you're going to compete against Clifton Park, if you're going to compete against me at Key Bank, if you're going to compete against me and run for office, which I hope none of you do, by the way, if you're going to run against me for town supervisor, you will not outwork me. It's impossible. And that is something we can all control. We can't control where we came from. We can't control who our family is. We can't control maybe a health affliction that we struggle with. But we can control how hard we work. And that is certainly the secret to success. So, but the learning never stops, and you always have to be willing to learn and open up and change when necessary. You know, public office, if you do run in public service, it's the one job you go from your competition saying, especially if you run against an incumbent like Yasmin did, you go from, oh, this person has no experience, they have no governmental experience, and they have no business being in this job. And then if you win 6 months later, part of the establishment, been here too long, needs to go. Right? I mean, it happens that quick. It's the only job where that occurs. But it's important to always reinvent yourself, no matter what your job is. Reinvent yourself, be willing to change, and be willing to constantly be as proactive as possible to be out in front of the coming trends. It used to be our business, when I was a young banker, we used to talk about 20, 25-year business cycles, right? What are the business cycles now? What do you see in your industries? I mean, we have leaders and entrepreneurs and very successful people in this room. What are they, 5-year business cycles for a lot of? Yeah. GE's a little behind in the business cycle. I own a lot of their stock. I hope it goes back up. But, you know, so they're 5-year business cycles now. It's the same with government. Government is running an organization. Our cycles and the things that affect government and changes happen extremely rapidly, and if you're not out front, you will get left behind. I personally, I did not have any government, and this is my first job in politics that I ever ran for, was town supervisor. It'll probably be the only one that I ever run for. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I've been asked to run for assembly, state offices a few times during my 18-plus years in office. And a lot of it does go back to raising money. If you're going to run for assembly, if you're going to run for Senate, if you're going to run for Congress or U.S. Senate in particular, you're on the phone every day asking people for money. I'm not interested in doing that. Plus you got to go to Albany all the time. Oh, I don't know if you spend any time down there. It's beautiful buildings, but other than that, it's not really an attractive place to work as far as I'm concerned. But I think we do need more people that don't have government experience in office. Now, I don't know how many of you have government experience, but we need less of that. We need less of that. You know, on the news all the time you hear that the policies of, say, a Donald Trump are just so out of the mainstream and so off the charts, and nobody agrees with him. But he got elected. His approval rating now is higher than President Obama's at the same time. So how does that happen if all we see every day is he's completely out of step with what's going on? What's happening? I don't care whether you like him or not. The bottom line is the parties presented an opportunity for someone like him to run for office. Both parties are at fault for that. And you look at the last few presidents, they offered up the opportunity that he took advantage of on a silver plate. And that's the truth. And again, that's both parties. I'm not blaming one particular party or one particular president. But there's a whole big world out there. Now you need to know your area that you're going to run in, and you need to know the area you're serving, but there's a whole big world out there. And what seems to be mainstream in New York, you go to most of the rest of the country, it isn't. And that's something that we definitely need to keep in mind to be good leaders. Because we have people moving constantly in and out. We're a much more mobile society than we used to be. So if you're going to serve your constituents correctly and be fair to everybody, it's very important that you understand everybody's point of view. Now, I was also asked to just talk about a few things that are challenges to running a governmental organization nowadays. The first is unfunded mandates. The amount of mandates and costs being pushed down by particularly New York State is tremendous. And if you look at your county, Saratoga County tax bill, what we raise in the county from property taxes that you pay is far outstripped by the cost of unfunded mandates. It's amazing. I mean, you think of all the millions of dollars raised from that property tax, even though we have the lowest in the state. And unfunded mandates alone far exceed what we raise in that county property tax. Every single year, and there's new policies being discussed right now that will pass through the legislature, that will get signed by the governor, that are going to make that worse. Again, I'm not blaming any single politician, it's both parties, and they're pushing a lot of those costs down on local governments, and it's not good. Energy policy. Energy policy in general is increasing the cost of energy, pushing up the cost for the energy suppliers. Of course, that all gets pushed to who? Us, that pays the bills. Now, we've made a decision in this country as a society that we're going to have a lot of green energy, solar projects, wind, and so on and so forth. But all of those projects are subsidized by the taxpayers. There isn't one solar project that can as a market, as a single project, can pay for itself. So they're all taxpayer subsidized. And that's fine if that's the decision that we've made as a society. But it's extremely costly. So you think about the billions of dollars that are being used to subsidize green energy. You think about the national grids of the world that are forced to buy that expensive energy. And then also the new, well, some old and some new additional line item charges that you're all paying to prop up green energy and the nuclear energy. And the costs continue to skyrocket. If you look at your bill, your National Grid bill, you'll see an SBC charge. It's on everybody's bill. All of that money gets diverted to where the government wants it diverted to. There's also two new charges that are not line items on your bill. The SBC charge is an old charge, and they broke that one out. There's two new ones, but they're just mixed in, so they're not line items on your National Grid bill, so you won't find them. You have to go back to the Public Service Commission's decision on the last rate case to find them. But they're ZECs and RECs. Those are the acronyms. One is zero emission something or other, and the other is, I don't remember what they exactly stand for, but they're both based on green energy. And those are two additional charges that you're all paying in your bill. But again, if that's a decision that we've made as a society that we're going to support these things, that's fine, but we need to be aware of the cost. And maybe that's an uncomfortable situation for you. But the fact that we don't even allow any national gas pipelines to be extended anymore in the state, or anywhere in the Northeast for that matter, on the whole. Yasmin mentioned the Keystone Pipeline, but as far as national gas pipelines, we can't get pipelines extended in the Northeast, even though we need it terribly for people to live, for quality of life. And why is that? It's because it'll hurt green energy projects, and it'll hurt green energy goals that have been established by governments. That's the reason. Now, again, maybe you agree with that. Personally, I think we should be using all energy sources, and certainly marketable ones that can pay for themselves, like natural gas, oil, and others. There's also a lot of forces outside our control that forces that we can't control that inevitably precipitate change. If you don't change, like I said, you will fall behind and you will not be a successful organization, whether it's public sector or private sector. I'll give you one example. back when I ran for office in '99, one of my goals was to redevelop the Exit 9 area. Now, if you were around here at that time, you remember a lot of empty retail places, a lot of empty buildings. Wanted to get Exit 9 redeveloped. Was able to convince Boscov to come here instead of Wilton in 2000. After they committed, Target came and Kohl's, and all these places filled up all of these empty areas. The mall was saved. And since Exit 9 has done very well. But with Amazon coming down the line and online retail growing substantially, about 8 years ago or so, I realized we need to diversify our economy at Exit 9. We can't just depend on retail because unfortunately the future doesn't look good for brick and mortar retail. So we went the way of hotels and healthcare, which have been fantastic for the community. Then a few years ago, we started to say, well, we need to take it a step further and develop the town center plan. Now, the town center plan was going to allow for additional types of development for properties that we knew would need redevelopment. And during the process of putting that plan together, Kmart went out. Read a report yesterday, Toys R Us is on the way out. Well, they're probably inevitably on their way out, it's just a matter of time, but according to yesterday's report, it might be sooner than we thought. So, but we have this plan prepared, and now investors can come to Clifton Park and get those properties redeveloped a little easier. Still have to go through a lengthy process, still scrutinized, all of their plans will be scrutinized, but at least it makes available various options for them, and we need to be ready. So that's just one example about trying to get out in front of change. Just like when we heard Global Foundries was going to be coming. First thing we did was a moratorium on 18,000 acres of the town of Clifton Park. You could not build for 18 months. We redid the zoning on about 18,000 acres, reducing future housing and making sure that we could, grow smartly. So again, it's about getting out in front and those changes. But with that, I don't want to use up too much of my time. Maybe I have used it all up, but I just think these are some things to keep in mind as you go forward. If you're thinking about running, if you're looking at who you might vote for, if you're looking at who you might align with, and who best is equal and aligns with your way of thinking and your ideals and your heart and mind. I just think those are some things you might keep in mind. Have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, one question, Chair.
Yes, I really appreciate the fact that you develop Exit 9.
Yeah.
And also talking about reinvent yourself. However, regarding green energy,
Yeah.
I have some concern about.
Sure.
That is something beyond the lifetime of a politician.
Mm-hmm.
Because for most of the politicians, either you're time limited or you can stay for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You are only talk about one generation.
Mm-hmm.
However, for energy, the resources is limited.
Mm.
We can only have so much oil, so much natural gas. If we don't spend money on green energy, we are really rip the future of our children. So I really feel that when Republican or Democrat looking at what needs to be done, that needs to look beyond your term
Right.
in the office, because otherwise, like the tax cut is good. However, that really, I think, opposite to what Republicans' principle, that is to reduce our national debt.
Right.
So what are we doing to our children? It's not just the quality of life that
Well,
we
let me
need to do.
they want to move it along, so let me just
I
say,
know.
You know, what I said was it takes all investments in all kinds of different energy. In town, we transformed our capped landfill, useless piece of property. There's now a 1 megawatt solar system on there. Clifton Park, because of our leadership with solar codes, was asked to be part of a small working group in New York State that came up with a unified code for all municipalities to follow. So we have been a leader in solar and in that type of energy, which is, like I said, that's definitely part of it. We have hundreds of years of fossil fuels, and what I think remaining, and what I think we should do is take some of those charges, instead of being solely focused on green energy and say we're going to spend billions and trillions of dollars a year on green energy, we need to shore up our electrical grid. Every time it rains, I got a quarter of the town that's out of power. I was down in Westchester County last weekend, and there was, I don't even know how many people out of power, but there was a lot. All through New England this week, millions of people out of power. We need to shore up our electricity grid, because unfortunately the solar and the wind really doesn't do us any good if people are out of power. So we need to make smart decisions and take a portion of that money, I mean, billions and billions, hundreds of billions a year, take some of that money, and instead of going all green energy all the time, is to take some of that money and shore up our electrical grid to make sure it's resilient, to make sure that we can get through tough times. People need it to live. We need power to our homes so we can live and to improve our quality of life. So that's all I'm saying. We need to divert some of that money to our electrical grid and getting it out of the 50s and 60s technology that we're still using. It's an embarrassment, I think, to our system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Very inspiring, motivational speech. Last year when I attended Civic Leadership Forum and then heard from Phil, and I also asked the question, where can I start? He told me, go to your local school, start something. I went to Segar Junior High School, and I am now the secretary of Parents Teacher Association. I mean to say, please, there are lots of opportunities. As Phil said, we have to work, we have to start, we have to find more coming up in voter registration as well. So without further ado, I would like to go with our last speaker of today's session. So before that, I would like to invite my fellow member of Civic Leaders Forum Committee, Mike Fandacaro, to introduce Susan Arbiter, watch the Capitol Press Room WCNY. Thank you.